Welcome back to Achieving Unlimited Health. In our first episode, we heard Dr. Cima's incredible origin story and how his early life and personal challenges really shapes the doctor that he became. So, today we're moving forward and learning a little bit more and diving a little bit further into his philosophy at the heart of his life's work, the Triune of Health. This is the framework that's guided him for decades and helped thousands of patients transform their lives. So I'm excited to dive right in. Let's get to it, Dr. Cima.
So am I. I am too.
Awesome. So in episode one, we learned a lot about you and a lot about your powerful origin story. So today we're diving into the philosophy that you've spent decades refining. So before we get into the science behind all of it, what does health mean to you personally?
I mean, without health, you have nothing. There's a quote that says, "You can have 100 problems. If one's a health problem, you only have one." And it's true. I watch it all the times, and I have patients come in from all walks of life. Some are extremely wealthy, and when they lose their health, it's like it doesn't matter how much money they have. They just can't do what they were able to do before, and with surgeries and all the different things that they have to go through, and every other thing is a health issue. And the longer you go on like that between your 60s, 70s, and 80s, life isn't so much fun. You see people in their 70s and they're dying, but they were dying like years before. They just haven't lived the way they used to live. They were just kind of like decomposing. And it's sad because your body has the capability of living for well over 100 years, 150, scientists say. So it's like, why aren't we living for any long length of time? And some people are, but lately there's no quality there. It's like I see people, I'm 102, but, you're in a wheelchair, you're or in a hospital bed, and it's like, that's not what I wanna be at 102. I'd rather be out playing tennis or golf or just being out with the grandkids, watching a baseball game, whatever you gotta do just to be happy, but be able to do it. That's the key, physically as well as mentally. So that's what you really wanna look at with your life, and a lot of people tend not to look at it until it's too late. And then by that time, what they wind up doing is they have to go for major surgeries and major severe treatment. I mean, chemo and radiation. It's not exactly fun going through, but the reality is that at certain points you're going to have to do it. But you'll never be the same. You'll go through all this stuff, but your health will just really suffer from it, and it'll just never be the same.
Absolutely. Without health, you really have nothing. It, like you said, doesn't matter how much money you have or any other factors really. And another good point is it's true you can grow older, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a good quality of life if you're not prioritizing your health, especially if you're lucky and fortunate to be able to do so with your health. There's people that obviously have certain issues that prevent them from being able to live to their potential in terms of their health. So if you have that option and you're able bodied to go ahead and maintain your health, it's definitely something to prioritize and take care of yourself so you can have a good quality of life as you age. And I know that you often talk about the triune of health, which is something your philosophy pretty much. So I know that you say it combines chemical, physical, and the mental, emotional, different factors. So, can you share a personal moment that you've had with a patient experience where you first realized that health couldn't really be explained by just one side and it really needed to encompass all of those factors?
As I went through my schooling, especially chiropractic, they were always talking about the physical, doing the physical adjustment on the body and the physical, and the physical treatment will take care of everything. It'll take care of headaches, it'll take care of back pain, neck pain. And so you becoming a chiropractor, you're saying you want to believe that. But then you see instances where patients got chiropractic care and there was no results. and it was something else. And then the more you talk to patients, and the more you start seeing, it's like, some people, they did well with nutrition. Nutrition was the thing that really helped them. And you start to work with different patients, and you start to see people that are underneath tremendous amounts of stress, and then you start to realize, like, the importance of, you know, leading a life that's, you can't have stress-free. That's ridiculous. But you be able to deal with your stress, properly, so it doesn't create a lot of, just bad stress. There's eustress, which is positive stress, which people thrive on. But then you'll get to a point where you get so stressed out, you get burnt out. And and because it's around you all the time, Layla, you just don't notice it. It'd be like a saber-toothed tiger chasing you every day. After like 100 days, it's like you get up in the morning, it's like, I understand. He's outside of my bedroom door. And as soon as I get out there, he's gonna attack me. And that's what you're going through every day with emotional duress, whether it's, because of with your family, it would be finances, it could be work related, it could be your profession, so these are the things that really have a real big impact. And I learned that. Actually, it was by accident, because I was wanted to teach a class on nutrition at the night school, the local high school around here, and they said, "Yeah, that'd be a great idea." Now, this is back in 1981. So I put out this whole big flyer. It was really great about nutrition, how to eat more and do all these other things, and only 5 people signed up. So they said, "They got good news and bad news, Dr. Cima. Good news is we have another class that you can teach. It's called stress. The bad news, you can't do your nutrition." So I said, "I'll do the stress." I said, "How many people signed up?" Now, this is back in 81. There were like 40, 50 people signed up for the class. And back during that time frame, people would say, "I'm stressed out," but that's all it was. There was no like definition. There was no anything that would basically really logically tackle what stress really meant. So, uh, as I started teaching the class, I started to realize, like, what the definition of stress would be stress is just your inability to solve problems in your life. And success, which is the exact opposite, would be the ability to solve problems in your life. So every day you get thrown problems constantly, constantly, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's your finances, whether it's your business or whatever. And the faster you can deal with those situations in a positive way, the less stress you'll have. But the thing is, the more successful you become, the more stress you have. So you have to be able to deal with stress effectively, so you can keep on, as you get more and more successful, you'll be able to deal with it without it killing you at the same time. So it was really good to, start to see that, because now I had a whole bunch of people that their whole lives were really, really impacted because of stress, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to deal with it. It's like, person I say, it's my husband. I can't deal with them. What do I do? And it's really difficult to tell them what they should be doing. But if you start to educate them on, how you work with stress, then you'll be able to handle any kind of situation out there. So I created my own little formula for stress. And it was just, going from the inability to solve problems in your life. And stress, pretty much, if you really look at it, there's just 3 parts to deal with it. First of all, you have to, accept that it's a problem in your life. And I think I said this even the last time. People, "Oh, I know it's stressful. It's my marriage, my husband, and my this, or my kids, and whatever it is." And I say, "No, it's not that." I said, "You know what the problem is?" They go, "No, what?" I said, "Look in the mirror. Who's ever facing you, that's the problem. And you have to accept that your responsibility to deal with the situation is 100%. So you're having difficulty with your spouse, or your marriage, you have to handle it properly. And you have to go in there, and accept the fact that, not only you're aware now that you're the cause of the problem, but the second part of the formula is you have to accept to do the things that you have to do to make it work. And then the third part is action. So if you go the awareness, acceptance, action, you'll solve any problems. Now, if you really look at today's society, most people have vices because they're stressed out of their mind.
Mhm.
Whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's sex, whether it's gambling, and their whole goal is take their awareness off the true problem and just put it on something totally different. So they'll drink, but they'll say, "Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I can drink and I'm fine. I can quit whatever I want." But that's not the goal of creating the situation where you're going to be aware of a problem, because just the alcohol itself alters your awareness, and that's the whole key. You don't want your awareness altered ever. When you're making proper decisions, I'm not saying you shouldn't drink. I would never say anything like that because I love wine. I'm Italian. But it's like, you can't like sit down there and drink a vat of wine, you know what I mean? Because you love wine, and you can't be doing that all day long. There's a time and a place for it. So it's kind of like when you're going to look at taking control of your life and helping improve it through the Triune of Health, you have to look at yourself chemically, physically, and mentally, emotionally, because you know where the problems are. You know if you're not eating properly. You'll know that by, like, let's say, your weight or how you feel or how you look. And so you'll say, "No, I don't like that." You know what I mean? So you'll know right away that that's something you have to work with. And as long as you start to realize, like, okay, physically, what do I have to do? Mentally, what do I have to do? Chemically, what do I have to do? As long as you're working on all three sides, you're making tremendous strides where people just say, well, health is all about nutrition. And it's not, it's one third. You can have the best diet, you can take in the best supplements, everything the best. It's 33 and a third percent of the out. And if you're a mental, emotional midget, then you're destroying your health just by being, stressed out mentally, emotionally. And so you have to put things in the proper perspective. And if you do that, you'll start to see, like, your whole life changes. Everything changes because you're not just trying to work on 33 and a third percent. You're working on 5 or 10% on one side, 5 or 10% on the other, 5 or 10 on the other side. And it becomes geometric. So it's like, you don't just improve 20, 30%. It's more like 40, 50%, because each side builds on the next. So when I was in school, everything was physical, physical, physical. And then when I start to realize, like, no, they're neglecting the nutritional, and that's something that's really important, I start to then look for doctors, and you talked about mentors that would really, like, they were tops in their field as far as nutrition goes, or tops in their fields as far as psychology went, all those different things. And those are the people who I started to follow. So most of the time, who I really emulated from a physical perspective was not the same doctor that I emulated from a nutritional perspective, because nobody was doing all three sides. They were just doing one side. You were either a nutritionist, you're a chiropractor, you're a psychologist, and that's it. You're not dealing with the other 66 and two-thirds of the problem. So, and that's what chiropractic did. And I didn't like that, because not only because I realized it wasn't helping, my patients, it wasn't helping me as time went on. So,
Absolutely. I think that it definitely, especially before, was very focused, like you said, on one specific thing, like a psychologist or a nutritionist. And for you to be able to create your philosophy and really realize that health is more than just one thing. It's these three different factors to, or three different factors to really be combined to be healthy. But early on in your career, did you realize that through a mentor, or did you have a moment that really helped you connect that for yourself and really connect those three elements are one philosophy for you now?
yeah, it was probably many moments, where I saw things, and it was great because you just start to see things that you weren't able to see before. So when I was looking at the physical perspective and the mental emotional perspective, again, I was trying to live that too as well. So I started to see improvements in my life. And even with my marriage and then with my kids, it was kind of like, we led our lives this way, we did things this particular way, and the goal was basically, it's just to always, survive on a high level. And so and for me, learning all these different things really helped me with my kids, help them with even, like, learn about new.
Absolutely. And I think it's great that you had this philosophy, and not only are you implementing for your patients, but you've learned to incorporate it in your own life. And it's really practicing what you preach in a way. So when you are giving this advice and you are talking to your patients, it's not something, you've learned or you read, it's really something that you can attest to and you know that it works and you can give that genuine advice and genuine guidance because it's also a part of your everyday life. I think it's awesome too that you've made it a family thing. I know a lot of your family members and relatives work with you in your practice, so it's great to know that they're also living that healthy lifestyle as well and practice your philosophy and are also, doing what they love and having the opportunity to work with you, but also really being able to have that healthy lifestyle as well. And I know that we talked a little bit about, the chemical side, and you've said the chemical side, nutrition and biochemistry are where most people need to start. But why do you think that that is specifically?
As far as nutrition and biochemistry, um, well, here's the crazy thing. When I was studying nutrition, it's just so much information that you have out there on the endocrine system and hormones and enzymes and antibodies. It's just the way all the chemistry of the body and starting to like learn all these different things and how the body works, how the body functions biochemically. And then said, okay, the food that you take in is what's going to give this whole mechanism this energy that it needs, all the important products to build all new cells and all the important products to build all the chemicals you need for survival. So to me, it was like, okay, that's what I want to do. So I started to look at doctors that um, they were like phenomenal in their field back in the early 1900s, and there was a few of them, and in fact, most of them were dentists. A lot of the nutritionists back in the late 1800s, 1900s were dentists, and the reason why was because they, tooth decay and gum disease was so prevalent. I think 90% of the population had tooth decay and gum disease back in the 1900s, whereas other primitive cultures, there was none. And then they start to realize, and they went through, again, visiting all these different countries and all these different societies, and they start to realize like the biggest problem, and this was back in the early 1900s, still nobody learned anything. They said it was all white man's food, white flour, white sugar, and white salt that was killing everybody. And sure enough, that's what was going on. And so, these doctors start to realize like, okay, when you're figuring out a diet or a nutritional profile for a patient, you have to remember that each person comes from a different background. And so what's good for you may be horrible for me and vice versa. The purpose of even the blood chemistry analysis that we do is the first thing is to try to figure out what foods you do well with. Because if we know what food you do well with and plus you like them, you can eat them. Most of these diets that people put you on, it's like, okay, you can eat mung beans. It's like, I'm not eating that stuff. So you're just wasting your time. And so it was a way to figure out, especially with the blood chemistry analysis, like what kind of foods you do well with. And then more importantly, too, is, what's your body doing with those foods at this point? Are they digesting them? Is it assimilating? And that's where the blood chemistry comes in really strong because it tells you what's going on with the organs of the body. So instead of giving them medications, you can try to start with supplementation and just help the body chemistry rejuvenate itself and go from there.
And even touching on what you said, there's also a lot of, misconceptions out there. But what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions that you've noticed from your patients regarding food and lab work and supplements when you originally started?
That when I first started, it was when I was first looking at blood chemistry analysis, it was back in the early 80s, late 70s, I would say. And so when I was looked, all the labs had different values too, as well. There's many, many reasons. But for example, one of the things that they did was they took cholesterol and made it into something really bad. And they just say cholesterol's bad, don't eat it anymore. And at the same time, back in the early 80s, they changed the food pyramid. Even today, I have patients come in today and they go, "Oh, my cholesterol's like 205 and they want to put me on a statin." I said, "You're fine. You're fine at 205." It was back in the 80s, cholesterol levels were between 225 and 325. And then they falsely related it to heart disease because they said, "Oh, that's what's killing you. It's the number one killer in the United States back in the 80s. This is the number one killer back in the 50s and the 60s. And today it's still the number one killer in the United States. So even all these people on these statin drugs, it's not doing anything for their heart disease." So once they start to play with the cholesterol levels, that meant you couldn't eat meat, you couldn't eat dairy, you couldn't have anything that had anything cholesterol with it, and that was the biggest problem. So you eliminated really good quality foods from your diet because they told you that those foods are not good for you. So as time went on, I realized back in 83, 84, I said, when I start to see them lower cholesterol levels, like to 300, to 275, to 250. Now you have some doctors, they want you to need 150. I said, these guys are causing disease. And sure enough, not only they cause disease, but they were saying, "Oh, you lower your cholesterol, you don't eat meat, you don't eat dairy, you do this, you do that, you'll never have a problem with weight." And it's so untrue because weight started to become escalated really big time in the early 80s. And I wrote a book, How to Eat More, Lose Weight, and Never Die Again, back in 88, because I knew at that time that everybody was going to get obese. Because they went on a high carbohydrate diet. It's going to cause obesity. It's going to cause diabetes. And it's just going to, lead to a whole bunch of other additional problems, which it did because 20, 30 years later, because of the protein deficit, people come in and their bodies are literally rotting away. They don't even know it because protein regenerates the body and you don't have enough protein, you can't regenerate the body. If you can't regenerate the body, it just keeps on breaking down, breaking down, breaking down. So you're in your 50s and your 60s, and you're a woman, and you go, "Oh, I got osteopenia or osteoporosis," and they want to put me on some kind of, I don't know, maybe calcium or some kind of Boniva or something like that. Where it's like, no, you start eating properly, increase your protein requirements because most of your bones are basically made of protein. There's some calcium in there, but the protein is what makes the bones. And if you eat enough protein and then do physical activities such as progressive resistance training, you're going to increase bone density without a doubt really fast. And then as you do that, you'll start to see your body feeling better and better. And you'll boost up even your hormonal levels as well by doing that. But people like even in today's world, like I said, they're afraid to eat protein. I see, it's like, what do you eat for breakfast? Well, I'll have this and I'll have that and I'll have this. It's like, but you ate enough protein for a snail. You need enough protein for a human being, and you're not going to be able to repair and rebuild your body. So, and I've seen people like just they stayed away from protein for so long that when they start eating it, they love it. They can't get enough of it. But again, it's either the blood chemistry will help, you know, base what you should be eating based on exactly what the blood test will start to show you. But we also ask the patients too as well. I'll say to the patients, like, what's your nationality? Is that's a dead giveaway. If you come in and you're saying I'm German when I'm Polish, that's simple. That's you're a fatty protein person. That's the what that's what all the people in that area of the world adapted to for generation upon generation upon generation. And so you adapt to those foods biochemically and genetically. So those are the foods that'll be great for you. If you start eating that way, you'll start seeing energy levels increase. That's one of the biggest things I see. People get they're tired, they're sluggish, and they'll push themselves. You have like a type A personality people, like including myself. It doesn't matter like how bad I feel. I'm going to push myself. So, which is not necessarily the greatest thing in the world because you have to kind of like back off a little bit and kind of watch what's going on. But that's what people do in their 30s and 40s. And one of my patients came in today with just a blood chemistry on him, and he's in his late 30s, but he's like, I don't want to wait until I'm 50 before I start doing any of this stuff. I got 2 kids, I got my business. I'm gonna get ahead of this curve because I haven't been exercising, I haven't been doing things. And so it was like great to hear that because he wants to know about working out. He wants to know how he should start training and all the different things. And as long as he wants to do those things, it'll be fine. I'll just lead them down the right path. That's my goal. It's not so much I don't heal, the body heals. It's I tell people that all the time. I said, the body takes care of itself. The goal is for me to try to figure out where your problems are. Because there's certain problems that are chemical, certain problems that are physical, certain problems that are mental, emotional. But, if you look and try to figure out with the patient what's going on and find the key side, that's gonna make a big change with the patient.
Touching on what you said about your client, it is better to realize that this is what's gonna happen if you don't kinda get ahead of it or start as soon as you can. So I'm sitting here feeling pretty guilty. I'm gonna make sure I feel like the next 3 days, everything I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna be like, "Is there enough protein in this? I need to have protein in this. I
No,
need."
what you wanna do, you wanna do it in the way where, like, I enjoy what I eat. Enjoy, what I do exercise-wise. I'd like to do maybe more exercise at this particular point, but with my schedule, sometimes I can't. But I love I go out. I don't play golf a lot, but I hit a lot of golf balls. But I love what I do, and to me, it's like, I love practicing. I love working with patients. You're talking to people every day, and it's fun, and at the same time, some of them are, and they're not in good shape. And for me to give them, just like the hope. I see so many people, I just like there's no more hope. The doctors have told them this or whatever it is, and it's like I'm kinda done, and I'm like, "No, you're not done. You get done when you're dead, okay? Up until that point, you're still alive, you're still kicking, you can do things if you want to. You truly want to, be able to do that, and so it's really the person's decision, but a lot of times too, Layla, they don't know what to do, and I can understand that because everybody's confused. I mean, you talk to these nutritional guru people, and they're just wacky with what they're talking about, and all these other guys that do all this these, "Oh, you take this supplement right here, it grows hair on a cue ball, and you'll be fine." It's not that simple. Well, you can't just take a supplement and say, "This is gonna help me." I don't care who you are. It's chemical, physical, mental, emotion. And so people get kinda, like, dragged into these situations. "Well, I'll buy that supplement. I'll do this. I'll do that. I'll do this. I'll do that." Then they see that there's no results. There's no continuity with what they're doing, so they just quit, it's very understandable. I would've. If I had to learn nutrition today, I don't know if I'd even wanna start. It's so confusing. And you can't just, and I had to go into, study it from, all the way down to minutia, to from endocrinology, laboratory diagnosis, biochemistry and all the rest, and nutrition, and then I start to realize, okay, I know all this minutia. I mean, my blood chemistry books are about 800 pages. In fact, most of this stuff, if I read it, I can't even understand it because I wrote it such a long time ago, but it's so deep, and the reality is that you could make it really simple. Just it's really simple for the average bat to understand. If you do that, it's gonna be perfect.
For sure, I think it can be definitely overwhelming, so that's why it's helpful for people to connect with experts and medical professionals like yourself and not just go and look things up because it can, like I said, be overwhelming. There's so many different
Oh,
things.
you can't there's no way. You go on the internet today, you'll be lost. A lot of the information you're getting you're getting it from drug companies. So no matter what you're saying, you're getting it from them, and they have a slant on anything that's, supplement or nutrition or anything else like that.
Absolutely. And so at this point now, you've been treating the human frame for decades. So how does structure and movement tie into the bigger system of health?
Actually, in chiropractic school, they always said structure governs function, which is movement to a degree. So it was like, okay, if you learn how all the different joints in the body, what the ranges of motion are, what muscles are the ones that are working at, what nerve supply that you're doing, you can start to feel like, okay, I can start to take my body and literally change everything about it from what it looks like, okay, to how it functions, just based on the movements that I'm going to do. So when I was especially when I got into bodybuilding, That was a key because you had to learn about every muscle group, what the function was, what the range of motion was, and then what exercises would you use to basically create those different ranges of motion and make those joints stronger. Not just the joints stronger, but you have to, the left joint has to be equal to the right. If it's the right shoulder, the left shoulder, the pelvis has to be balanced. And then the knees have to be balanced. So it's like this whole thing where the whole body has to, you literally have to look at it and say, okay, some people need to have everything totally remodeled. And other people, like I have a fairly decent frame and they've taken care of themselves. And there's really not a lot for them to really do to help make the changes that they need to make. But that's what you want to do. So you always want to have, if you look at anybody, at any professional athlete, they make everything look so simple. Because it's just basically, it's just to be able to go through those different ranges of motion with all those different joints and everybody, everything working in perfect harmony. So it looks graceful. It doesn't look like, some klutz walking down the street. And it's the same thing with, with foot. I don't care what sport it is. It's like you become an awe of the athlete that can do that kind of stuff. It's amazing. But the human body is amazing, and you can literally train it any way you want to train it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure athletes are definitely looking at health in the way that you are with those three different factors. They're not just thinking about what am I eating? They're thinking of it as a whole as well. So, and speaking about that, most people, like you said earlier, think about nutrition and health instantly kind of go towards the nutritional route when you think about health versus the mental, emotional part. So, with the mental emotional piece so often overlooked in medicine, how did you start weaving this into your own practice?
That's a good question because what had happened was when I first started practicing, Layla, I was like graduated tops in my class, like I said the last time. I'm out of school like 2 or 3 years, and I'm like practicing here. I'm working with this guy. I'm trying to open up an office there. I'm doing this, doing that, doing this, and doing that, and nothing was working. So I met a doctor who said, "Come down to Florida. We'll create a partnership, and everything will go good." So that's at that time I had just married my wife, and I said, "Come on, let's go down." She wanted to come to Florida too, so we came down. Worked with this doctor for 5 or 6 months. It wasn't working out. So I'm like, kind of devastated there. We came down. So then they opened up another office, and the same thing. I'm kind of like, faltering there too as well. And I'm like, you know what what's going on here? I said, here I am. I graduated like tops in my class. I have friends out there that were horrible, and they're doing good. And it's like, what's going on here? I mean, something's not good because I'm like on my fifth or sixth different practice, and I'm going nowhere fast. And so I was like just sitting in my townhouse with my wife, and I was like, and this is gonna sound crazy or corny or whatever. I don't care, whatever you want to call it. But I was saying to God, I said, "Why are you doing this to me, God? And here I am. I'm trying to trying to make a living. I got a wife, and I'm trying to do the best I can possibly do. But why are you doing this to me?" It wasn't like I heard a voice or anything else like that, but this is what I got back. So I'm not doing anything to you. You're doing it all to yourself. And as long as you start realizing like the things that you're doing wrong, and then from that day on, I just made a commitment and I started to like learn about the whole mental emotional approach to overall health and how to be successful. So I would, at the time you had those, you can get books and you get tapes, you can get CDs and everything. So I'd listen to all these people talk about purpose and goals and success and all the rest. So I started to study what they were saying, and a lot of them were saying the same thing, just maybe different ways and everything. So I took all their information. I said, okay, this is what you have to basically do to become successful with life. And so I started to study how to become a success mentally, emotionally. Because, during my childhood, I wasn't so successful. And, for whatever reason, it just kind of like followed me. And I said, no, this is up to me right now. The minute I made that commitment to myself, that was it. I never looked back. And I went from like, just I took my practice at that time, built it up to like, oh, it was God, it had to be like back this is back in the '80s, early '90s. I was doing, close to, I'd say between a half a million to three-quarters of $1 million on my own, practice-wise. I was seeing tons of patients. My children would, I start to had my 4 kids by that time. Everybody was going to school, everybody was happy, we were doing everything, and it was really good that I kinda learned how to, like, deal effectively with my life from a mental and emotional perspective.
Absolutely, and this is, I guess, my assumption in a way, because I don't know the validity of it, but just listening to you, what I'm thinking is, I know, like, now, obviously, more than the early '90s and late '80s, that mental health now is something that's talked about a lot more frequently and a lot more open as to before, late '80s, early '90s. I feel like it wasn't as discussed freely. So it's interesting to have had that approach and that thought process even back then, where no one was probably really making that connection between mental and physical together. Like, that's definitely something. Looking back, I could only imagine that that was definitely a lot more, like, unique, where most people weren't thinking that way at all compared to now, it's more well known.
Yeah, and now it's like, it's a big topic. I mean, you see what's going on even our society today. There's just, mental illness is kinda running rampant. It's horrible, and it's not gonna get any better unless you start really educating, students and families on, what you're supposed to be doing as a family unit and all the rest. The good thing with us, and I made a commitment, and everything was based on like, okay, what's my purpose going to be, and am I going to be able to be committed to this? And so when I got married to my wife, just being like, guy from New York was like, if it doesn't work out, I get divorced. I mean, that was my attitude. I was it's not the attitude, but that was pretty much it. So, but then I had my first baby, Natalie, and as soon as I had my first baby, I said, "That's it." I said, "I'm not gonna. This is not gonna fail." I said, because I watched friends that were going through divorces. They had 1 or 2 kids, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go fighting with my wife. I'm not gonna have some other guy raise my kids or some other woman tell me what I should be doing with my kids because I'm dating her. That's not going to happen. So it was just making that commitment to the family and just working as a family unit. And it kept us really together. Even today, my 4 kids and their spouses all get along. All my grandkids, they all get along. Yeah, they have a skirmish here and there and stuff like that. But everybody talks their mind. They'll tell you exactly how they feel, and that's it, but they'll all sit back and they realize whatever they're saying is to help the family and not necessarily like, "Okay, I'm more, powerful than you are," or whatever. So the family gets along really great. I have other, nieces and nephews for the holidays. They wanna come here. They wanna spend it with us. So we have, like, somewhere like 20, 25. I call them, they're all my grandkids, really. So they all come down, and we all have a great time during the holidays, and who's gonna be playing golf and pickleball, baseball, and, swimming and all the rest of that stuff. So that was something I never really thought about much. That's probably more like a God thing because people keep on saying, "Oh, you must be so proud. You must be this. You're so lucky." And it's like, us, luck has nothing to do with it. It was a lot of hard work. But, the one thing that I'm really proud of is my family now. It's something that I never even like really I never thought about the way I think about it today. It's now going to be going into a third generation of doctors. And then I'm looking forward to that. So I know at least 2 or 3 will be doctors. I know that.
That's amazing. I know you have 11 grandkids. That's that's a lot of grandkids. It's a huge family. So, I mean, I know you said something about people saying, "Oh, you should be proud," and in a way, like deflecting because it took a lot of hard work, and in a way, you put all this energy and hard work into building such a strong family. But it's definitely a huge achievement because not so many people don't have that.
No, you're right. Yeah, that was the part that, like, I was totally unaware. I mean, I was aware of it, don't get me wrong, but I'm so much more aware of it now because I have people that I know, friends, they're in their 70s. Either they're fighting with their kids. I was like, just last night, my wife's a best friend of hers, her daughter's getting married. They've been fighting back and forth. The daughter uninvited her to the wedding that she even paid for. It's like, what are you doing? What kind of I couldn't believe. How do you get uninvited to your own daughter's wedding? Something's really it's not good. So it's kinda like and I don't know, I'm not gonna say whose fault it is because I don't know myself, but it's like you have this situation where you have your kids and you're not getting along with them. And this guy it's horrible because she's a sweet lady and she's just, like, devastated with this whole thing with her daughter and everything.
Absolutely. And, you talk about your family a lot in these, situations where it's even reflecting on your family being healthy and having a healthy family dynamic, which a lot of that is the mental and emotional energy and experience that you put out there with your family, and they're doing the same thing. So beyond that, do you have maybe a patient experience or a patient memory that comes to mind where you can really say that addressing the emotional side of health versus other factors really made a bigger difference in their recovery than just nutrition, for example?
No, no, there's a lot of people I could think about because I would sit down and say, "Look, if you're interested in taking care of your life or changing it, this is what you have to do." And it's really up to them to do it, but a lot of them don't wanna do it. So it's kinda tough because they know what they're supposed to do, but they just don't wanna do it. And then there are certain people that'll take their lives and they'll change it. They'll get their marriage to start working better, but it's a rarity. It really is a rarity. Well, I would hope that there would be a lot more people. Here's a perfect example. This is back in the late '80s, okay? I go to speak at some separated and divorced group at a church, okay? So I go up there and I'm speaking. Now, I'm only married like 6, 7 years, and these people are in their 40s and 50s at the time. They've been married for like 20, 30 years or whatever. So I said to him, I said, "How many people in this audience didn't know they were getting divorced or separate?" 40 people raised their hands. I said, "You mean to tell me that you were married for 30, 40 years and you didn't even know that your spouse wanted to divorce you?" It was mostly women. "Yeah, that's right." I said, how could you be so far out of touch, mentally, emotionally, with your spouse?" I said, "I walk into my house, I can look at my wife in 2 seconds, know if she wants to kill me or she's happy to see me. It doesn't take very long." And that was what's going on. I started to realize, like, they'll get themselves into a situation. There are certain compartments in life that you have to fulfill. One is self and one is family, okay? And if you don't fulfill those 2, you might as you're pretty much done. And so the whole family thing, it's really it's you have to really work with your family constantly. And it doesn't mean because you work with them because they were 5 or 10 that you stop. You have to keep on working with them. And it's just an ongoing process. And that's what makes a family a family. So even when I see my kids, it's like they're still my kids. I see my grandkids, but it's an ongoing relationship that I have with them. Make sure every time I see them or I'll go to their games, I'll do everything I can possibly do with the grandkids to say, this is where a grandfather's supposed to act or respond to his grandkids. I didn't really have that totally because one of my grandfathers, he lived in Italy, and my other grandfather was a great provider, but he wasn't like the most affectionate guy. And my grandmother was made up for him. She would, like, hug and kiss you until, like, you couldn't kiss you anymore. So, it was really nice to have all that stuff and realize how important family is. And that's where really, like, that's gonna help you mentally, emotionally through life. If you can deal effectively with your family and your friends, you're gonna just be happy. And like I said, I have friends going back, like, 60 plus years. And they'll keep on saying, James, you always like the kid that always went home and studied. You always did this. You always did that. You tried to stay out of trouble. You didn't want to do this. You didn't want to do that. And look at you today." And I said, "No, I really appreciate because they're really happy with the success I had, and I know I work really hard at it, and but I appreciate the fact that they know me when I was like some little punk when I was 16 years old, and they like the way I grew up."
You know, I mean, that's kind of like the best friendships to have, best friends that or friends even that can go back so far into your youth and get those different versions of you. They get to really see you evolve and have that reflection. Like, it's great to have that. Not everyone can have that.
No,
So,
no, I love getting in touch. I love hanging out with my friends because we start talking things about 40, 50 years ago, and you laugh. You just because nobody else is gonna understand what you went through except your friends because they were there right with you.
absolutely. And sometimes friends are your family. Friends become family as well,
Oh, exactly.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of friends that I consider family.
Absolutely. And, you know, you've built such a strong family dynamic and clearly a good friend circle as well. And beyond that, you've built this philosophy for over 50 years now at this point, 50 plus years. So, looking back, were there times that you ever doubted your philosophy, or were there moments where patience proved you right in ways that you didn't even expect?
Well, I never had doubt with this whole thing because I knew it made too much sense. Um, and as far as patience, it was a great learning experience because patients would come in and say things to you, and a lot of doctors, like, would refute as, it's a bunch of crap," you know what I mean? But I'd listen to the patients, and they can help educate you. It's not just a one-way street where patients come in and, like, you're the boss because 'cause I'm the doctor, and, the patient's the peon. The patient has a lot of good things, and they'll run things by me. "Did you ever hear about this therapy or this nutritional supplement?" And I'll say, "No," and I'll say, "Well, I'm getting good results with this or doing," and I'll kind of note that down. So
Mhm.
they kind of like educating me. They want me to, understand what they're doing. they want me to help them, and they want to be able to help themselves. I think that's a really good relationship. Doctor and patient it should be a nice back and forth speaking relationship where the patient is offering enough information to the doctor and the doctor is offering enough information back to the patient, where they create a nice agreement with one another.
Absolutely. And it helps to build that trust and that dynamic where you are able to feel comfortable and have that, I would love to know things about my doctor. It would make me feel more
Oh,
comfortable. So
yeah. Well, you'll learn about if you're a patient here, you'll learn about my whole family immediately.
I know I might I might have to take a trip out to Florida and come see you.
But and you know what? It's great because every one of my patients, I hug at the beginning of the visit, I hug at the end of the visit. I don't care if you're a 75-year-old man or an 8-year-old kid. I mean, to me, it's like hug somebody and show them that you care about 'em. That's what I mean. There are certain patients that I remember one patient telling me one time. She goes, "I don't know. I don't remember the last time somebody hugged me." I said, "You kid me." No. She says, "My husband died. I'm pretty much by myself, and I just talk to people." But I said, "No, as you come in here, I'll hug you every time." It's because that's part of my treatment. It's like, "Hey, listen, you're family to me. You're not just like a patient or a number. I care about you. I want you to care about you more than I care about you." And that's what I like to do with patients. So we have this good rapport with a lot of my patients, and they've had it for years and decades because they've been here for so long. They'll come back, and they'll come back and they'll, "You helped me 10, 12 years ago, and I need your help again." And they'll come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a good provider is such a game changer. I've had a good doctor years ago and I was so upset. I'm still upset because I aged out of his practice. And I think about him all the time. I'm like, oh, I miss Dr. Kohal. Every time I get sick, I'm like, I wish I could call Dr. Kohal. I wish I could shoot him a text because he just was really good at making you feel comfortable, and he also would go into, like, "How are you feeling? What's going on in your life?" Those kinda questions where not everyone is doing that, especially if they're only thinking, about one element, they're not thinking about the mental side of things, for example, so
This is a great thing, Layla. Patients will come in and they'll be telling me about the neck or this, that, and the other thing. And as I'm working on them, I explain to them how the neck is affecting the digestion or that shoulder pain that they feel in the gallbladder. And they're going, really? And they say, you know what? That makes so much sense because when I eat fat, I feel like I'm all tied up in that area. And so I get them to like, like, okay, this is what's going on with your body. And they're really happy because they learned something about their body that they were never able to put two and two together. But because I've been doing this for decades, it's like it's simple. I know the roadmap really fast. So and to give them that kind of an education it's the best thing in the world for them.
absolutely, because so many things are connected that you'll never know about. I feel like from interviewing you and some other providers that I interview for, I've learned so much about how things are connected that I would have never put two and two together. So it's definitely interesting how everything does work together and come together. And
And the other thing too is with my chemical, physical, mental, emotional, the Triune of Health. The chemical side had to fit with the what we're saying physical, and it had to fit with what we're talking about mentally, emotionally. So it wasn't like I'm going to just take this hodgepodge of mental, emotional stuff that has nothing to do with the chemical stuff that I'm talking about. Everything was really integrated. And that's what I really wanted. So the reason why my program is more special is because I integrated a lot of information from a lot of different doctors. I don't take any credit for all the information they put together, but I kind of like took it and weaved it in a way and created, kind of like a masterpiece of different things that you can do to help improve your overall health, chemically, physically, and mentally, emotionally. So, and so everything had to fit together. So when I was talking about the physical, it wasn't like just talking about, okay, your spine. I was talking about the cranium, the nervous system, well, the peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and central nervous system, and then hormones and everything else like that. It was like, you had to really make sure that what I was saying chemically definitely was there physically too as well to support it.
absolutely. And you've talked a little bit about how you've reinforced your own philosophy, the triune philosophy, in the way that you live. But for someone who's maybe tuning in today for the first time and wants to learn more about it or wants to change their life in a way, what's one simple step that they could take to start living that way on their own?
I would say a lot of people, the first thing they can do is, with themselves is some nutritional information, just because that's what a lot of people really are interested in. And so I would maybe focus on the nutritional. But more importantly, what you want to do, Layla, is you want to like look at your life and say, well, where am I weak? Am I weak like mentally, emotionally? Am I crying every other day? And, I'm stressed out of my mind. And so that's where I would prefer that people work on it. And in my book, Achieving Unlimited Health, I don't know if you have a copy. I'll send you a copy that there's a whole mental emotional section on how you can condition your mind for success. Because when I was taking seminars, you go to these rah-rah seminars and they go, oh yeah, they get you up for the day. You're really excited about your practice or whatever. And then 2 days later, you're depressed. So it's like, okay, how do I take, forget the rah-rah stuff, but how do I take the real good essentials of this and convert that into the way I think? And then as you start doing that, you start, doing it and everything starts getting better and better. And you start feeling good about yourself, and it's not like I'm the king of the earth or, I'm a president or I'm like a super wealthy human being, but I'm just a nice, well-rounded person that just is happy to be alive and just enjoying everything that I do. And so that's really the key. So with anybody that's out there, it's like, look at your life and see, if you're 30, 40 pounds overweight, now that doesn't mean that it's a nutritional problem. It could be a mental emotional problem because, you're just so stressed out, you got to keep on eating. People either eat themselves to when they're stressed out, or they don't eat. So, but most of the time they eat. So, and the things that they're eating are not usually the best things. So it's like, look at the side that you feel like you need the most help on and start getting information with that. Now, if you just go to my website, you can get a PDF copy of the book, and it'll tell you, like, okay, chemically, this is what you can do. Physically, this is what you can do. Mentally, emotionally, this is what you can do. And then just start looking at that and start, every day, just do something that's going to help you mentally, emotionally improve.
Absolutely. And we'll make sure to link the the link to your website with the copy of the book at the bottom of the podcast. So whoever's listening that does want to check that out and give it a read, we'll make sure to include that as well. But thank you so much for this conversation. And, you know, this was a further look into your life and your origin. And I love getting to know more about you and your success and everything that has gotten you to this point so far. And it was also such a powerful look at the triune of health: chemical, physical, mental, and emotional,
Yeah,
and how it really forms the foundation of unlimited health.
that's it.
So, absolutely. Thank you for talking to me and for everyone listening. Make sure you follow the show so you do not miss the next episode, and make sure to share it with anyone who can benefit from hearing this, which is pretty much every and anyone.
Pretty
So
much everybody.
everyone can benefit from learning about this and learning more about basically the foundation of unlimited health. We all want to be healthier. So share it with someone you know, someone you love. And until then, here's to health without limits. Thank you so much, Dr. Cima.
Thank you, Layla.